And I do believe we are live everywhere now. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the Rock Licks Workshop. We're on Workshop 3 now. Aaron is here. Tim Sexton is here. Arno is here. Very nice. Okay, greetings from Vienna. That's awesome. Good morning, everybody. And good afternoon to some of you. Good evening to some of you. And sorry I got you out of bed for some of you. Cool. All right. Sounds like you can see me and hear me okay. Awesome. I'll just say goodbye. I don't want to say goodbye to anybody yet. Hello, Daywalker is out there. Chester, it's flying by. We got a ton of people in here already. Mike is here. Dean is here. Maker of Nothing is here. I don't know if I know Maker of Nothing. Sam6. Hanzo is here again. Hey, everybody. Hey, on Instagram as well. I can't see that far. I've got my contact lenses in. I can see people are saying hello, but I'm sorry I can't see that far. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So we are on the third workshop for the Rock Licks. It's a new DVD course I've got out. If you're interested, there's going to be a link over in the chat on YouTube and Facebook, not on Instagram right now, where you can check out the course, and I would appreciate it if you would. If it's something that you're interested in, that's always beneficial, and if it's not, that's totally cool, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to be talking today about development of rock licks and trying to apply those to a real-world situation in a way that works for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about, okay? Oh, hey, Yui from Germany is here. That's awesome. Jack is here. Domingo is here. Very cool. So let's go ahead and get started on this. And remember, at any time, there's going to be a link that you can click on. Again, not on Instagram, I don't think. I don't know if you guys are on Instagram or not, the team that's working with me right now. But anyway, you can click on that link and you can check it out. Remember, everybody, that a little bit later in this session, we're going to be giving away 5 GuitarZoom memberships, 5 memberships, okay? So not now, but when I say later on, what we're going to do, you're going to put hashtag GuitarZoom, space, and then put why it is that you'd like a membership, the GuitarZoom membership. So those are what you're going to do. hashtag, #, right? GuitarZoom, and then space, and then type in why you'd like one. Don't do it now. We'll do it later on, okay? So, yeah, and then again, if you can check out that Rock Licks course, that'd be great. So let's just recap a bit. We started off by talking about how important it is to understand development, like technique, different kinds of things like that, understanding your fretboard a bit better, all kinds of things like that. Today, what we want to do is we're going to listen to a different backing track. Again, just something. Anything you could find out there is perfectly fine. And this one is going to be a little faster than the last one. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you how you'd have to approach it. If you, we talked about how with your technique, for instance, whether you're picking or whether you're doing legato or whatever it might be, when you are given a tempo, you have to immediately decide what you can and cannot do at that tempo. And that might mean a particular picking pattern that you normally play, you're not able to execute at that tempo, or you can, right? So maybe you have to readjust it somehow to make it work for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, okay? So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to play you just a little bit of this backing track here. Let me get it back to the beginning. So immediately, regardless of the actual tempo, you should be thinking in your head, and then da 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 da. And maybe those are the 2 worlds that you live in, is dun 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 da 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 da, right? Those are the 2. If you wanted to, you could move up from there. We could do triplets. Decca, da, decca, da, decca, da, decca, da, decca. That would be another option. And then decca, 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 decca would be the next option. And really, those are the rhythmic options whenever we're going to try and jam to something. That's where we're going to be. So as I listen to this, that's what I'm thinking about is... triplet, 16ths, which I really can't snap very fast like that, but you get it, okay? So when I go to start playing, there's my eighth notes. Here's my quarter notes. Here's my eighth notes. Triplet. Sixteenths. Okay, so that is basically the palette that I have to work from. Now, before we get started, I do have some notes that I want to talk about really quick, just to get you in the right frame of mind in what I'm talking about. First of all, what is a lick? Okay, for me, a lick is a repetitive idea. That's what it is. When we talk about soloing or writing a melody or something like that, oftentimes we have two parts to it. We have elements that repeat, and then we have elements that move us around in terms of pitch, maybe fretboard as well, but certainly in pitch. And that's often what I refer to as meandering, okay? So usually in some capacity, you're using both of those elements. You're using elements of repetition and then elements of motion, pitch motion, right? So as I play, again, this isn't about fast or slow or anything like that. It's you figuring out where it is that you want to be. So don't get hung up on my 16th notes or something like that. It doesn't really matter. So if I was playing something, for instance, I'm going to do just a little bit for you of repetition and then movement, so you can kind of get the idea. See what I mean? Now again, let me shut that off. I'm not trying to be overly fancy or anything. I'm just trying to figure out how to combine these two worlds. A melodic pitch movement along with some sort of repetition, which is going to be our licks, okay? So then the next thing I want to talk about is what is then a pattern or a sequence. Now, I'm not saying this is the same thing that everybody agrees on in terms of definitions. I'm just telling you how I think about it. So for me, a pattern or a sequence is like a lick, but it continues on, okay? So it's really not something that you repeat over and over and over. It's something that kind of propels you across the fretboard. So for instance, if I was doing something where I went like this, you see how I'm doing a pattern of 6, and again, don't worry about what I'm doing, just kind of listen to that. So as I'm playing, I'm doing a group of 6, group of 6, group of 6, group of 6, group of 6. You see? So as I combine those together, if I did one independently, I could consider that maybe a lick because it's repeating, right? But as I start moving it across the fretboard, it becomes more of a patterned idea. And there's lots of different ways I could approach this way. You see? So as I'm playing that, that's what I'm thinking about is, am I playing a lick or do I want to develop some sort of pattern or sequence that propels me across the fretboard, which I do quite frequently. You know, I might develop something where I'm going... right? That sort of thing where I'm moving across the fretboard, I'm propelling myself. So I'm starting with a lick idea, and then it moves. And again, I talk about all this stuff in the Rock Licks course. So there's lots of different ways to approach this. And the reason why I want to have this conversation with you is because oftentimes what I made the mistake of is when I would learn something cool from somebody, or something that I thought was cool, I didn't know how to use it. Like I couldn't figure out how to use it in my playing because I was like, well, it's too fast and I couldn't do whatever. And that's what I want you to understand is that I always want you to remember to manipulate whatever it is you're learning to fit within the confinements of you as a person, right? You're going to get better. You're always going to get better and things are going to get faster and, or whatever it is you want them to be, more elaborate or more musical or more melodic or anything you want. But in the meantime, between here and there, you can utilize these ideas at a pace with a technique that works for you. If you remember, if you were with me on Monday, we talked about the difference between legato and picking and how sometimes legato might be more beneficial for you because picking might be too fast or something like that. Well, today we're going to look at, I scribbled down a bunch of things for you this morning that we're going to talk about, if I can read my writing. And we're going to see that there's some instances where legato doesn't work or picking doesn't work. You know, when wouldn't picking work? Well, at this tempo, maybe we can't pick this fast, right? If we wanted to do the 16th note or something like that. So that's what we need to think about. So let's, just a couple of the things, and again, these are all tips for you, and just in case you got to go and you don't have time for the licks, you can come back for that later. Another thing I want you to think about is when I play, I think about closed versus open position, okay? Closed position is when I'm doing something that's kind of locked in, and I think about this. And again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This is just my thought process. If I'm playing something that's more based off a pentatonic idea, so I'm locked into a 4-finger for 4-fret idea, you know, something like that, whatever it might be that I'm playing. So the music's going, and I'm playing. Right, whatever it might be. Okay? I think of that in my head as a closed position. An open position is when I start spreading out my fingers. Within my head, that idea of movement. Okay? As I play. You see? And again, I'm not showing you that because I want you to learn that. That's not the point. I'm thinking about it as more of a motion idea. So sometimes I've got a static idea, which is like a closed position where I'm going to stay there and I'm going to build something. Like, again, a Zakk Wylde lick, maybe where I'm going right? After I'm done with that lick, I got to go somewhere. An open position idea for me is when I'm playing. And it propels me around the fretboard, you see? And I use closed and open position ideas. Again, this is a thought in my head, but that's what I use when I play. So I'm combining the closed position and the open position with the availability of being able to meander. If you've ever seen me talk about meandering in any of my videos or my guitar courses, I utilize those. Those are the things that I'm using. And then the theory comes in. The theory is, well, what's this chord and what note am I going to try and emphasize, that sort of thing. Charles says, is there a link for the backing track? There isn't. I just grabbed this morning out of some jam tracks that I tend to use when I practice. So I didn't have time to get that made for you. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so if that makes sense, let's go ahead and get started then. And I just want to remind you one last time, as we talk about these things, I want you to, I hope we don't lose Instagram again. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, adjust them as needed. Adjust them to tempo, adjust them with hammer-ons, pull-offs, picking, whatever it is that you want to do with it, okay? So let's look at this. The first thing we're going to do here is let's just start off by looking at a pentatonic scale, okay? So if I was going to take the E minor pentatonic and do something with it. Okay, so that's where we would begin, okay? But let's take some of those notes out of there and figure out what we can do with it. Now, at that speed, bum, 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 again, it's hard to develop something that sounds like a repetitive lick because it's too slow. If I go, it's not really going to have a dynamic impact. If I was playing that slow, and I'm not being mean or anything, I'm just being honest. If I was playing that slow, I wouldn't try and do some sort of repetition like that. I would much rather focus on melody. Right? Because it's going to sound more like music than going. Okay, so what is my next option then? Well, if I start listening to this again, go back to my pentatonic. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. So that's kind of where we need to be. Da, 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 da. So now we have to decide if we want to play at that speed, are we going to do hammer-ons? or are we going to pick these? And that's entirely up to you. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever works for you. So if I was picking these, see how I can start developing repetition, do-do-dum, ba-da-dum, and I can use that space. First of all, musically, space sounds very good, right? Having some space where you're not playing. And the second thing is I can change up my phrasing as I do that. Okay, so it's pretty cool. Now, if I couldn't pick all that, my picking isn't quite up to that level. Again, I'm working on it, but I'm not quite there. What I might do then is use some hammer-ons and pull-offs. That's okay too. Nothing wrong with that at all. So as we progress through some of these ideas that I'm giving you, and again, I would highly recommend, we're going to kind of bash through this stuff because I know people have to get back to work or back to bed or whatever it is you have to do, and I don't want to take all your time, okay? So you're going to be able to watch this later on YouTube in a playlist or whatever. You can watch all this stuff, okay? But I want you to remember that it isn't about the scale. Like, we need to know the scale, because the scale, whether it's a position or multiple positions across the fretboard, the scale propels us. It allows us to move. It allows us to move up and down and create different pitches. That's what the scale does. But once we've achieved a position on the fretboard or whatever it is, what we need to do then is we need to start trying to figure out how to make it sound musical with phrasing, with those first things I talked about. Phrasing, melody, and of course licks. Putting something in there that sounds repetitive. And if you remember in the first or second lesson, we talked about how when you play things that are just based off like a 4-note sequence, sometimes it doesn't sound very exciting because the song you're playing in might be in 4 and the groove is in 4 and then you're playing in 4 and everything just sounds too square, okay? Not hip, that's not what I mean. I mean, it just sounds like the same thing over and over and over. So what we want to do then is start looking for some different things that we can do. Now, let's say you're practicing diatonic scales, right? So I'm in E minor is what I'm doing here. So I could take an E minor scale. Maybe I go here. Right? And I play that. I'm just going to take that thing right there. So again, I start my track. And I work with that. Sorry, I gotta keep getting up. If you're on Instagram, you might have to make your way over to YouTube or whatever, because I can't keep getting up and touching that screen. I'm not sure why it goes black, but I'll figure that out later. Normally, I don't go live on Instagram, so this is kind of a new thing for me on my phone. Normally, I do this. So as I'm playing, now let's think about that. If we wanted to double that, man. That gets us up there in speed, doesn't it? Okay, so I might just take a pattern out of that. And try and start practicing that a little bit and develop whatever that is. And again, this is where licks come in, or repetitive ideas. So let's start breaking this down a little bit and just throwing some ideas in there. So if you were playing more pentatonic and more on the half speed, so to speak, level, you might do some things where you're going. It might wind up sounding a little bit more like Southern rock or something like that, using this minor pentatonic just over this thing, but that's cool, nothing wrong with that. Remember, we talked about too in one of the previous sessions, changing a note can make a big difference on the way it sounds. So notice how right here I'm going. sorry. And then here, so I'm changing, I'm playing 10 and 8, and I'm going to 9, and then playing 10 and 8 and going to 7. You see? So something like that will spice it up a little bit and make it sound a little more interesting. So now let's move on and start talking about just a few licks here, and hopefully this will help you, and then we'll get to the giveaway, and that way we'll see who can win. We got 5 winners. We'll announce them at the end. And remember, if for some reason if you do win, if you're one of those 5 winners that I announce, you want to email support@guitarzoom.com. If you win, if I call your name, you want to send an email saying, I won the membership or something like that, to support@guitarzoom.com. But don't do it yet, okay? We're not there yet. So now let's just start looking at some ideas. So let's take this thing, okay? When I'm building a lick sometimes, the lick is less about the notes, and sometimes not, but it's less about the notes and it's more about the pattern that I'm creating. Let me show you what I mean. So if I go right there, what I'm doing is I'm playing, for those of you that might not be able to see very well, I'm going from 8 to 7, I'm doing a pull-off, and then I'm dropping down to the 9th fret of the 3rd string, back to the 7, and then a pull-off from 9 to 7 on the 3rd string. Like there. Right there. Now let's think about that. Da 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 da. So da 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 da. It's a 6-note sequence instead of just playing 4 notes where I'm going. You see? So if I play that 4 note over there. See, it doesn't sound quite as exciting. If I play it as a 6-note sequence, okay? Now, if I was going to double that speed, it would sound like this. So again, if I double it, and this gets into that whole thing of faster is better, slower is better. For me, neither one's better. They both do different things. When you speed something up, it adds energy. It does. It just adds energy. It adds power to what you're doing. When you play something very, very slow all the time, it's hard to create that energy. But the problem is too, is if you play fast all the time, when you slow down, it just adds another complete element of dynamic because everything isn't fast, right? So when we bring it back down, it can sound really, really cool by doing something like that. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, if we look at that lick that I just played, and we break down not the notes necessarily, but the pattern. I'm playing a pull-off on a string, and then I'm going to the next string up, and then going back and then doing a pull-off on that thicker string, right? So as I go, what I want you to concentrate on is the pattern that I'm using to play the lick, not the notes, because the notes themselves can be changed. I can put this anywhere I want, relatively speaking, inside that scale. So let's say I do the same thing, only this time what I'm gonna do is instead of playing it here, which is what I just did, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move over here and play 5 and 7, and then 8 and 5. See that? So now let me start that again. Slower, we'll have double time. Double time. See? So somewhere in there is where you are, right? One of those is where you are, but I'm using that same pattern as I play. So I might move somewhere else. I might move up to maybe 10, 7, 8, 7. Or 12, 8. I've always loved that sound where I'm playing 12, 8, 12, 8. But the pattern itself is the same. The way I'm picking it is the same. So that's something that I think is really important when you start learning licks, is understanding that even though the lick that you're learning might have different notes or be in a different key or something like that, oftentimes if you start focusing on the pattern itself that you're doing, you'll learn more about you and what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable for you when you play. Because like when we start learning how to do sweeps and things like that, if you know what a sweep is, so if I was playing, right? That sort of thing when I play, I still have to figure out how to make it fit. Like if I just go, again, for some people, they love that sort of thing, and that's wonderful. It's not really my thing. I like to make them fit on a rhythmic level, right? So if I'm doing and usually it'll move into something else of those other things that I talked about. But if you think about that kind of thing, it's a really great way of approaching it. And then you take a tempo. Maybe this tempo is too fast, right? You take your metronome, you slow it down a little bit, and you start developing. You start thinking about what you want. You know, and start developing whatever licks, whatever patterns, like in the Rock Licks DVD. It's not like you have to learn all the licks. It's just trying to find the best ones in there that make sense to you and then develop them at a speed with the technique that matches what you're trying to do. Even if you change notes. Again, sometimes it's nice to change notes that are still part of the same key. But listen, we can step outside the scales sometimes too in different kinds of things. So there's lots of things that you can do with this. My point is, my life really changed when I stopped trying to just learn licks the way they were, and I started taking licks that I thought were really cool, but then adding my own me to that lick. Do I need to, hammer this or pull this off, or do I need to pick this, or do I need to change this note so it feels better to me, that sort of thing. So I want to show you an example real quick here. I gotta make sure Instagram doesn't go away. I'm going to show you an example of this real quick here. So I'm going to take that same pattern that I just played, and I'm going to show you where it doesn't work very well. So if I take that same pattern, I'm going to play 8, 7, 10, 8. 8, 7, 10, 8. So I'm going to do that same. And what you're going to notice is I wind up on my middle finger when I start, and I wind up on my middle finger when I end. And that one's a little bit harder to play because I have to wind up on that finger, right? So in this case, what I might want to do is reposition this. See, now all of a sudden it becomes easy to play. I'm playing the same notes. Because I'm playing it in a different position, it actually becomes easier to play. So sometimes you might learn something from somebody, and you're playing it, and you're like, wow, this doesn't feel very good. But if you move it into a different place on the fretboard, it might feel much better for you. Maybe in the smaller frets, or like here, I changed it to the second and third string, so it brought the lick a little bit closer together, and it makes it a little bit easier to play. So these are all things I want you to think about. Okay, so we don't take too much time. We're going to do the giveaway. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say go, but I don't say it yet. I'm going to say the words G-O, the letters G-O together, which spell the word G-O, right? And then I'll jam a little bit, and what I want you to do is post wherever you are. Post hashtag GuitarZoom, and then a space, and then why you want the membership. And the guys over at GuitarZoom are going to choose 5 winners. It is not me choosing them because I'm doing this right now. And then what I'll do is when they get done with all that, tally it up. They'll send me over. God, I always forget to check that. They'll send me over the winners, and then I will tell you who the winners are, and you will contact support@guitarzoom.com. Okay, so ready and go. I'm going to jam a little bit because it's fun. makes sense. Cool. All right. So let's see here. Sorry about that. Somebody evidently was calling on my phone, which I thought I had that shut off, but evidently I don't. So, all right, cool. So let's go ahead and I need to come back over here, unfortunately, as I always do, and pull this over so I can see who the winners are when they get them to me. Let's see, Michael. Michael says I will have them in a second. Okay, so maybe Michael's the one that has the winners. Okay, we'll give him a minute anyway. So hopefully that makes sense to you, okay? That's what I want you to start working on in this session, is finding some licks, some development of a repetitive idea. The more you can think about not just playing 4/4 or something like that, but trying to break that out a little bit. Find a pattern of 6 or a pattern of 8 or something like that that you really like, and start developing that, okay? But play it at a speed that works for you, whether you're picking it, whether you're slurring, which is hammer-ons and pull-offs, whether you're doing a slur to it, something like that, whatever works for you, okay? So, and if you haven't watched the last 2 live sessions, I would highly recommend you go back and watch those. Again, there will be a playlist on YouTube or whatever where you can do that. Okay? And we talked about how to make squeal sounds. So in one of the, I think in the last session, when we talked about techniques, we talked about that. Okay? Where do I go to watch this without the buffering? There shouldn't be any buffering on my side. The buffering might be happening on your side. I've got fiber optic here, so I don't think we've got any buffering happening on my end of things. Okay, we have our winners. Ooh, what is that word? Roy Kahlon, RoeyKahlon from Facebook. From Facebook. Tony Holland from Facebook. Arnold Glenn Phillips from Facebook. And Kevin Pirnie, Pirnie from YouTube. And Samuel Ferguson from YouTube. I don't know if any of you are here right now, but those are the winners. Those are our 5 winners. And remember, contact you that I just said your name. Please contact support@guitarzoom.com, okay? And please do me a big favor. Check out the Rock Licks course. There'll be a link over there in the chat somewhere for you to check that out. See if it's something that you're interested in, okay? But walking away from today's lesson, or today's workshop, what I want you to be thinking about is how you can reconstruct these ideas to make them comfortable for you at a tempo that works, with a picking or slurring style that works for you, okay? And then also deciding what speed you're going to play them at. Whenever you hear something, as soon as you start, tapping your foot or clapping your hands or whatever it might be, okay? As soon as you hear that, that's what's going to give you the signal on what you need to do to be able to execute different ideas that you're working on, okay? So hopefully we got everybody. Roy, RoeyKahlon from Facebook, Tony Holland from Facebook, Arnold Glenn Phillips from Facebook, Kevin from YouTube, Kevin Pirnie, and Samuel Ferguson. All right? Now remember, Friday, I'm going to go live again, and we're going to talk about trying to put all of this together. So we're going to be talking about licks, patterns, meandering, melody. We're going to try and put all of those things together in a cohesive solo, so you kind of understand that, okay? So please join me on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel, and we'll give away 5 more memberships, okay? So between now and then, stay positive, take care, keep practicing. Check out the guitar course, check out Rock Licks, and see if it's something you're interested in, and then we'll go from there. And then remember, Monday we're going to have a Q&A. So Monday we'll just hang out, and I'll answer your questions, and we'll go from there, all right? So everybody take care, stay positive, and I will